Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So it looks like American farmers are once again celebrating their decision to vote for Trump in large numbers. Wait, no. What's the opposite of celebrating? See, last week, Trump announced his bailout package for US farmers hit by his tariffs. But farm leaders say it doesn't make up for the damage caused, that it's a band-aid at best. The problem for them is that even if the Supreme Court finds against the tariffs, that won't stop US farmers looking forward to a bad 2026 and beyond. This should be a lesson for people in lots of different countries who might be persuaded to vote for bombastic populist policies. It's not like those American farmers can claim Trump conned them. It's not like he promised to make farming great again in general terms and then tariffs came out of the blue. He promised to impose tariffs on pretty much everyone. He actually kept his word on that one. And in 2024, as Trump was promising his tariffs before the election, US farmers and others who would be affected would not have known for sure how other markets would react. The most spectacular result of the tariffs for American farmers was the effective block on imports of American produce in China. Huge market that was suddenly shut off. But other markets might have applied counter tariffs of their own. The EU have not really engaged in a trade war on this occasion, although they have in the past. I've said that I think this is because of the issue of security for Ukraine. But I cannot imagine US farmers, as they were voting for Trump, were thinking to themselves, oh, Europe won't retaliate because they need the US for help for Ukraine. And even if they had thought that, there was no reason to suppose China would not hit back. As for the bailout itself, there are some things to think about. First of all, it's not as much as the cost to US farming from the tariffs. The bailout seems to be for $12 billion. In terms of the cost to US farmers, there are increased costs for importing things like fertilizers, other chemicals, so on, equipment. But there's also been a loss of export markets, some due to direct retaliation, some because of boycotts of American produce. Even though Trump has now climbed down with China, the losses from this year were huge and the exports may take time to recover again. China has promised to start buying some US produce again. They haven't guaranteed it'll be as much as before. Remember, they've been getting stuff from elsewhere, Brazil, Australia. Some farmers have already foreclosed as well. They simply couldn't afford such a devastating year. Not enough to get them through such a bad season. So the bailout won't help them at all. I mean, the first cent doesn't arrive till next February. Not to worry though, because Vice President Vance reportedly has a financial stake in a company which buys up foreclosing farms. So he'll do all right out of it. But even the farmers who can hang on until next February, they'll not be getting compensation. They're getting some money, not as much as they would otherwise have made. The money might keep them ticking over. It won't make them profitable. And that's the main thing to consider here. What farm leaders have been saying in the last week is they don't want the handouts. The bailout is desperately needed right now. They say, the government needs to provide the market conditions to run sustainably. Right now, the US government is doing the opposite. It is applying the market conditions which make a lot of US farming unsustainable. Trump has damaged the American brand for reliable, fair trade. So countries are looking elsewhere now. For some farmers, this year will not actually be as bad as it gets because the US is making itself a hostile trade partner. Close markets such as the EU and Canada are looking to strengthen trade ties with one another. This means that in the coming years, some US farmers may find they lose more and more orders as easier trade between other markets starts to squeeze the US export market. In other words, 2025 may not be ground zero. And do you know what Trump had the nerve to say after announcing his bailout? Quote, "Now we're once again in a position where a president is able to put farmers first, but unfortunately I'm the only president that does that." Absolute cheek. What he's done is apply an economic policy which the Supreme Court may yet rule unlawful, which has hurt US farmers really badly. He's then given them a bailout which will be worth less than their losses at a cost to the American taxpayers. Because think about how this works. So in terms of the lost exports, that was American produce that foreigners were going to buy but didn't. And now Trump is getting American taxpayers to stump up money to stop all the farms affected going under. Some already went under, remember. The fact of the matter is that US farmers currently find themselves much less competitive than a year ago. The bailout doesn't make them more competitive. It just covers for their uncompetitiveness. Bailouts are there to cover for emergencies, something that couldn't be helped, but it could be helped. And think beyond the farms as well. Those farms are businesses, and like all businesses, they need goods and services from other businesses. There's an entire supply chain ecosystem that's been hit by these tariffs and the subsequent loss of confidence in American agriculture here. The bailout already doesn't cover for the losses in 2025, but there's nothing at all for the losses in 2026. The US government presumably won't even take responsibility for those. This is why farm leaders have spent the last week saying that while they were grateful for the bailout, what they needed was the government to secure stable markets and trade relations. Trump's not doing that. He's attempting to bully other markets. The problem there is even where you can succeed, and America is very strong, it's a very good bully, those other markets might take their beating short term, but they won't like it. So they will plan to reduce their reliance on American trade in future trade strategies. And China is more than happy to present itself to many countries around the world as the stable business partner, the country who keeps their word. China would love to boost its own trade relations with some of the countries Trump is bullying here. If the US continues with this strong-arm approach to trade relations, they will lose more trade in the coming years as the rest of the world favours stable trade partners over mafia bosses. And that won't just affect farmers, but lots of export industries. American farmers need to learn two things if they want to turn things around. First, Trump is not going to give them those stable markets or lower input costs. He's incapable. His understanding of international trade is fundamentally broken, and he shows no sign of being able to learn lessons. The tariffs will remain in some form unless someone forces him to stop. And his attempt to bully rather than work with trade partners will continue because nobody, not even Congress or the Supreme Court, can force him to stop that. Second, farmers do actually have some power here. They are an important industry to Republicans, and Republicans are important to Trump. Nobody else is supporting his bullshit. Farmers need to start getting tougher and getting organised. Stop asking the government to do things they're incapable of doing. Start taking agency themselves. If they want my advice, it would be to get together, put pressure on Republicans in Congress to start blocking the policies which are hurting them. There's nothing they can do to get Trump to change course, but they can influence Republicans, and Republicans can influence Trump. And if Republicans won't do their jobs, start telling the public about why farmers are failing and maybe start looking at candidates who will stand up for them. But will they break the habit of a lifetime and actually do it? Or is it just stuck in their heads that Republicans are the pro-farming party, despite the obvious evidence to the contrary? Let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel for more content. Click the bell notification icon so you know when new videos are coming out. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.